Hey folks, welcome to week 1 of Pilot Bootcamp, our program that is going to take you all the way from idea to finished draft of a brand new pilot script in 6 weeks. So just 6 different class meetings that will go all the way through this draft of a new script. Let's get started. So we're on a staged channel right now on Discord, so if you're watching us on Discord, we can't hear anyone's mic most of the time. The only way to be heard is if you are called upon and brought up to the stage, so to speak. So you'll have to look for that request to speak icon if you actually want to speak out loud. It looks like a small raised hand at the bottom of your Discord pane. Once you click that, and I have brought you up on the stage, you will have to click the accept invite button, which shows up on that green bar, as you can see here. If you are on a phone or tablet, you may have to turn your device to the side to find that. And if you're watching on one of our other many social media places like Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or one of these, then we would love to still see your comments. We should still be able to see them, though sometimes it takes an extra minute. But you should come join us on Discord on our server called Script Camp. What is Script Camp? We are a community focused on helping you take your concept all the way from idea to a complete draft, with lots of free classes, events, and workshops like this one that we're in today, and some classes for our paid subscribers, boot camps, writers' labs, advanced labs. So basically anything beyond the free intro class, you're going to have to be a subscriber to participate in the whole boot camp session. If you sign up for your free trial, you can try out absolutely everything that we do. I guess I thought I had a slide on the membership options there, but so unlimited subscription is going to give you access to every class, every course, every workshop, every lab, and it comes with a 2-week free trial and you can cancel anytime. So just sample all the things that we do here. We're part of Skill Camp, which is a nonprofit that offers many free and low-cost classes to learn new skills to meet your life goals. You can see our many different servers here. Pictured on the left side of your screen, you'll see Film Camp for filmmaking, Word Camp, which is our second biggest server. That's for novel writing, and it's where we host our weekly novel writing classes, Saturdays from 12 to 2. We have Toon Camp for animation, Code Camp for coding, and some of these other ones, such as Lingo Camp and Design Camp, are still growing. We haven't hosted any classes on them yet, but you can still join those communities, so you'll be updated as soon as classes are added there. Here's a list of a ton of upcoming free classes on Script Camp. So, today is Story Engines and Loglines. This is week 1 of our pilot program. We also have the feature boot camp coming up. So that's going to be the 30th, Sunday the 30th at 11 a.m. and running from 11 to 1 for 8 weeks on Sundays. So the next 8 Sundays are going to be feature writing. You're going to learn how to write an entire movie. It's like movie writing 101 from beginning to end in 8 weeks. Also, on Sunday the 30th at 1 o'clock, we'll have a short workshop on magic in storytelling. So fantasy writers might get a kick out of that one. We'll have a revision and revising kind of workshop Thursday, May 4th at 6 p.m. We have week 1 of our feature boot camp on May 7th at 10 a.m. That's going to be one of our earlier classes. We have writing sci-fi Sunday, May 7th at 1. Copyright for screenwriters on that same day at 5 p.m. Dialogue class Thursday, May 11th at 6. A scene workshop, Fixing Scenes, May 14th at 1, and a class on monsters and villains, May 14th at 5 p.m., which should be fun for all of us horror, thriller, and action fans. But really villains of any kind, but we're kind of focusing on it from the genre perspective. We'll have new fiction writing classes in WordCamp coming soon, too. We are more than halfway through our novel bootcamp writing course, meaning that in about 5 or 6 weeks, you'll see new announcements of when the new session of that is starting, and also other new fiction writing classes that have yet to be announced. All right, here's just a recap on those dates. So that pilot bootcamp is 6 weeks. That starts today. Novel bootcamp should start in June. Feature bootcamp starts on Sunday the 30th. All right, so today we have already talked a little about premise and logline last week. If you were there for the week 0 class, hopefully you were, and you got some of these basic things down and were able to come up with an early version of your logline. It's okay if you weren't here for that. You can still join us on the week 1 if you want, but you will be starting from scratch as opposed to the folks that will have done a little bit of the groundwork to begin with. We have, so today in this class, we're going to try to finalize those series and pilot loglines. It may not be totally 100% finished, and you'll have this whole week to kind of continue working on it if you want to, but let's try to get as close to finishing those as we can. We're also going to be filling out sketchbooks this entire week, the sketchbook being the step immediately after their logline, so the logline being that one sentence expression of what is the show about, And we have both a series and pilot logline, so really it's kind of, 2 sentences that expresses what your show is about in 2 different shapes or sizes of the, types of expressing what that story is. And then we are going to be working on sketchbooks all this week, which is just a sort of blank, non-formatted document that includes all of your inspirations and ideas for characters and scenes and moments and lines. And it's just going to be like a collage of all of the whatever you have for the show. You need to dump some sand into the sandbox before you can start, making the sand castles or whatever. So this whole week you'll be working on Sketchbook and trying to just nail those loglines as precisely as possible. Next week we're looking at structure and story beats. So you should subscribe to Script Camp if you want to continue with this bootcamp past week 1, because next week we're going to be looking at what should go where in the script and the differences in formatting between half-hour pilots and full-hour pilots, which are going to be have roughly the same beats, but a half-hour show is 3 acts, and a full-hour show, you have 5 acts. You have more space. You have twice as much space to work with. So we'll look at those, those little quirks of writing in each of those formats. Week 3, we're going to be expanding that list of story beats into a full set of scene cards, which is a full paragraph for every scene that tells you exactly what happens in that scene. Whose scene is it? What are they trying to do? What tactics do they use? What is the result? Do they succeed or fail? And does it push them closer to or further from their final goal? That kind of stuff. And you're going to make a full list, like a very detailed roadmap throughout your entire story before you start pages. We are starting pages in week 4, so you don't even actually need to download any screenwriting software at all until halfway through the course. Don't worry about that. You should mostly just be working in Google Docs until we reach that week 4, at which point we will start the script, and you're then going to be sort of incentivized in a way to have chosen a shorter idea, because you'll be writing a third of the script every week. And if you're writing half hour, that means only 1 act per week. That's about 2 pages every weekday. If you're writing full hour, it's going to be more like 4 pages every weekday. So you're going to be writing 20 pages a week. So if you're not sure what you want to do, or you're brand new at this, or are not sure that you can make that full, really intense time commitment to doing this, then I would recommend picking the half-hour idea over the hour-long idea. And we'll have that first draft finished by June 9th. That is the completion date for this course. So you'll have up until the end of that week, and then a new class starts. So if you fall way behind, you can always just catch up in the next one if you want to. After a course concludes, we switch the days just to make sure that everybody has a chance in all the time zones of the world to do both feature and TV. So right now, TV is running today, Friday 6 to 8. When the course is done, it'll swap over to the Sunday slot from 11 to 1. Okay, so plenty of classes here at Script Camp, plenty of things to do, and we have over 100 hours of content between all of our servers of different things to do every single month. So we'd love to have you here as a subscriber, just so you can get full access to everything.
Hey, Conor, we have someone on Twitch who's just a little bit skeptical.
Okay.
It's a secret. 2022 says, so you're really going to try to teach people how to write a movie in 8 weeks? Do you have samples I can read to prove any evidence that you guys can do what you're trying to teach others to do? I'm just wondering if there's any maybe boot camp students in the room who can weigh in on that.
Sure, yeah, maybe some boot camp students want to speak as to our programs here, if you'd like. Or he's saying you guys, so I'm not sure, is he referring to me and you specifically, or just anyone in the class, or something like that? As for me, I can give you, as we wait to see if anybody wants to tell us about the program, why don't I give you an introduction to me? I'm glad you asked. Here's a slide all about me. I have been assigned and working Hollywood writer since 2017 when I first broke in, and that was as a result of my script that placed in the top 10 of the Launchpad feature contest. Launchpad feature contest. Later went on to place in nickel quarterfinals. I ended up getting signed with my first manager as a result of that. Went on to write for Creepshow for the Shudder Network. Have taken meetings all over town, have scripts set up in the horror thriller space at a few major production companies, and I've been on a couple lists that you can see here. You can just Google my name. You'll find on the Tracking Board website, you'll find the announcement of me signing. What was that, 6 years ago now? Goodness gracious. So yeah, I've been writing TV, doing a lot of rewrites for horror thriller type movies since 2017, and working with both writer-directors, small production companies, and getting features set up in town. So that's a bit about me. I'm not typically posting or sharing those scripts, but if you come to the classes here, I'm sure that you will be able to find lots of examples of work that other students who have taken these programs would love to share. In our chat, Dan says, I did a first draft on this for a movie. Carmen says, I wrote a full feature in 4 weeks. I've written 3 other feature scripts in 8 weeks. Wow, yeah, Carmen's been through a lot of boot camps and has finished a lot of scripts this way. So I think lots of folks have found really good success writing scripts and finishing them and moving on to that next one in our programs here, in the classes here. Even if you don't sign up, even if you just go to the free events and workshops, then you can still get quite a lot of good value out of Script Camp. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. So how to join the bootcamp? You can sign up at scriptcamp.net. If you go to scriptcamp.net/membership, you will be able to find that button to sign up for your free trial. If you plan to enroll but have not yet done so, there's a poll that Nacho can post in the chat, and I'm sure he will do so in just a moment, where you will be able to vote yes to indicate that you're interested in signing up but have not yet done so, and it will give you instant access to our member chat channels. Here's everything it includes: 100 hours of classes every month, exclusive Discord channels, access to our video library, which includes recordings of all the events and classes we've done before, huge discounts off of consultations and proofreads, and if you subscribe yearly, you will be saving 40%. On our website, too, you can look at scriptcamp.net/coverage, and you will find all these other services we offer, like chapter consultations, query letter editing, developmental or manuscript proofreading, story development, logline consultations, and all these things with big discounts for members, up to 90% discounts for our subscribers. There's the poll in the chat, so just click that number 1 if you plan to sign up, and we will give you all the permissions of a member, and you can start chatting in our exclusive areas of the server. All right, so here's the overview. We are looking at starting with Bootcamp ground rules, so just suggestions for the kinds of ideas that you should probably be choosing. We'll look at Loglines, both the series and pilot Loglines, which are 2 very linked ideas, but kind of distinct in the way that we have to approach them. Time slot and format is going to be the type of show that you're doing in terms of, well, how long is it going to last, and what sort of continuity format are you using? So is it going to be one of those shows where the continuity resets every week, or is it going to be more like a long story that needs to unfold 1 chapter at a time? We will talk about that difference between that premise and status quo show. And about that halfway mark, we will be posting loglines. So in about 45 minutes, we will be sharing loglines from stuff that you guys are working on. It does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be finished, but just be aware that, earlier unfinished ideas will get more feedback and will get more notes than more developed ideas will. Okay, so that's all we have for today, and then we will end with questions. Again, we will be ending around 7:50 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, so pilot finished in 6 weeks. Will this draft be good? No, it's a first draft, and if you're just starting at this, there's no reason you would be good at it right away. In the same sense that if you were just starting painting, your first painting is not going to probably be hung in a museum. So we should probably also just move beyond this idea that any script needs to be, quote, good in order for it to have been worth our while. You have to get through so many of these not as good scripts to get to those good scripts, and just to build those skills. And I recommend approaching this like going to the gym, not like you're not digging for buried treasure. It's not like if you do just the right combination of keystrokes, then you'll end up with some masterpiece on your first try. It's unlikely that your first 5, 10, 20 scripts, will be of super high quality, and that's okay, because this is how we learn. You have to just get those scripts under your belt. Okay, let's start with sketchbooks, so go ahead and make your sketchbook now. There's nothing fancy or complicated about this. It's simply a blank Google document. So go to Google Docs and make a new document, and you're going to title it Name of Your Show Sketchbook. It does not have to be the final name, and it might just be untitled, Cop Show Sketchbook or something like that. But just make a document where you're going to keep all your research, ideas, and sort of early work in the same place. We don't want this on 5 different sticky notes all around your house. We want this all in the same Google Doc. And at the top of this document, you're going to include just a little list of things to fill out. These are like the first basic questions to ask when we're determining or making choices that are going to determine what this show is. So feel free to write these on your at the top of your sketchbook. We need title, genre, format and time slot, comps, series logline, and pilot logline. And hopefully throughout the class today, we're going to be filling these things in so that by the end of class, you'll have written at least something for all of those, even if it is, still subject to change a little bit. All right, so feel free to do that now. Okay, you're going to be answering those questions today. It's okay if you don't know what everything on that list means yet, because we will be going over them one at a time. Let's just do ground rules first, though. So don't do true stories, anthologies, or adaptations, simply because they are going to require more research and more pre-writing work before you get into the actual pages. So anything that's going to require you to do more research is going to be tricky to pull off in 6 weeks or in 8 weeks. And the point is not to write a perfect script in this time. It's not even to write a great script or even a good script in this time. Your goal is to finish a script that, so many scripts, you have to iterate upon them, and you get feedback, you go back and adjust them based on the notes that you got, you revise more. Typically, you're not going to be really kind of like just considering a script finished until you have done 3 to 4 drafts. And around that mark is where I would suggest that most people kind of stop, unless you're being paid, or unless there's some reason why, like it's being produced or something like that. Probably stop around 3 or 4 drafts and be ready to move on to the next thing, because the only things you need to be doing in order to be working on this career as a writer are these 3 things. 1, reading. There's no skipping this step. A lot of people think, maybe can I skip this part? No, you actually have to be reading, and we are going to say that we recommend that you read 3 professional scripts every week, minimum of 1, but I recommend 3 is my, that's what I would suggest and what I try to keep up with. And the second thing is writing. You need to be writing scripts, shorts, books, plays, anything. And last, you need to be moving on, which usually means, we hope, finishing things and moving on. But if the finishing things contingency is not playing out and is not allowing you to move on, then you might just have to move on without finishing something and realize when you've done all you can, or when it's holding you back, or it's sort of stopping you from improving anymore. So reading, writing, and moving on. Those are the only 3 things you need to do. It's not like you have to be churning out solid gold scripts every time in order to be getting any better at this. In fact, it may not feel like you're really getting better for the first couple, but you will be whether you think you are or not. As long as you are doing those 3 things, you're not going to get worse. So do those 3 things, reading, writing, and moving on, and you will be able to improve as a screenwriter and work towards the point of being able to do this as a career, which is the career aspect of this is really how the instruction here is focused. We're trying to put you on the path towards being a Hollywood professional screenwriter. Now, with a writer's strike starting in a few days, I know that's kind of it's a weird time to be addressing that or approaching that, but these things don't last forever. The writer's strikes tend to last, 6 to 12 weeks. It might be shorter, might be longer, but in any case, it's not really going to affect any of us. So let's just look at that as after that strike is done, there will be a demand for content, and hopefully we can be the ones that eventually move into these writers' rooms, and are able to start getting our things produced as well. So that's what we're going to kind of gear the instruction towards. It's okay if you're writing for some other reason, or if you want to be a writer-director, or if you want to just write for fun, or anything like this. But just keep in mind that all of our instructions are going to be like imagining that you want to be a professional. All right, so you're thinking of an idea, which idea you might want to work on. If you don't have a great idea yet, maybe just think of what is some mashup that you've always wanted to see, but that has never gotten made before. Maybe 2 genres that you really like, but you've never seen kind of combined in the unique way that you have imagined before. You really like rom-coms, you really like heist movies. Well, have you ever seen a rom-com heist? I don't know. I don't think I have. So maybe that could be really fun. And it should just be something that's going to keep you excited and motivated and interested for this 6 weeks. So it can be something that it's not going to be a masterpiece. You shouldn't pick something that you have to get just right, or else it's going to dishonor your family's legacy, or something that you feel is an essential story that needs to be told, and it needs to be told just right. Or it should be, and it should also not be that thing you've been writing for 10 years that you feel is your whole life's achievement. It's all been leading to this. You should not pick any of those things for a boot camp class, because again, we have a limited time, and first draft is not going to be that good, and if you're just starting at this, it's not going to be that good. If both of those things are true, it's super duper not going to be that good. So try to just go in with realistic expectations and understand this is hard work, and we're just going to try to pick an idea that's going to keep you excited and keep you working and allow you to finish it, learn what you can from it, and move on to the next thing without having to agonize over every step of, is this, wondering, is this good enough? Is this doing the idea justice? So pick something fun. That's what I suggest. I know it can be difficult to hear these big notes at early stages. Maybe think if you pitch your boot camp script is something you've been working on your whole life and it's so important to you, it can be tough to hear things like, well, that parts of that may not be working. But try to get used to hearing that, because writing for TV, so much of that is taking and incorporating feedback gracefully and intelligently, and taking the things that work from that feedback and incorporating them into your work, and trying to not use the things that would steer your project astray. So if of the skills that you're working on in this course, taking feedback and giving feedback are a big part of it. And how you receive feedback and the way that you are, the skills that you're using there are what are going to be determining whether or not you are considered good in a room. Good in a room being a term that's used to describe, are you easy and nice to work with? Are you always coming up with solutions, or are you always just poking holes in people's ideas? Like, it's the difference between being somebody that's frustrating to work with and somebody that's great and really rejuvenating to work with. So we want to be good in a room. You want to be able to take feedback well and have a thick skin and let it sort of slide off your back, and always be thinking, okay, my idea is always sort of in flux until it has been produced on the screen. It's never the final version of that, and so anything can change and it won't break the idea. I mean, unless you feel a note really would break the idea, but you can also remember that I'm not going to twist your arm to follow the notes. And in this course, I'm just giving feedback as best I can, and your other fellow peers are giving their feedback sometimes as best they can. Nobody's trying to tear your script down or ruin your life or any of these things. We're all just trying to improve it as much as we can in the way that we know how, and trying to help you make the best version of the thing that you are trying to make. Last thing, after this class, if you plan to continue, please use your real name, or if you really, 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 really don't want to use your real name, then use a nickname or middle name or something like that. You can right-click on your name on the Discord chat room and click Change Nickname, or we can do so for you if you need. You don't have to do that for today, but if you're going to keep going with a boot camp, feel free to try that out. Okay, so we're starting with Logline. Logline being the first step, because it's going to act as both a guidepost to help you stay on track for the story and make sure that you're making the same thing all throughout. Or we can also use this to explain to somebody else what your script is. The logline is that one sentence expression of what is this show, or what is this movie, or what is this book about. That means it's going to have to include a couple things. We need to know who the main character is, what they're trying to do, and what's standing in the way are some of those basic kind of questions to fill in. And some people are like, well, how would I possibly do this without having written the scripts? How would I know what to fill in unless I have written the script already? Well, that's a big part of this, is trying to learn this separate skill of loglines. It's sort of like, it's not so much that you want to be able to just recognize what look at a finished work and then try to deduce a logline that would describe that. If you want to write professionally in Hollywood features and TV, you should try to build this skill of starting with the logline and then being able to write a version of that. Because when you're working with development executives, they might just give you a really vague idea, or it might just be one sentence, or even just a topic. And they're going to expect you to roll with that without changing the fundamentals of that topic, probably, or without changing too much about the basic idea. We don't want to have them give you a logline about, a medieval Viking, and then you come back with a cyberpunk story. It's going to be like, well, what are we even working with you for? So you have to kind of be able to start with the basic small version of a story, the logline or a one sheet being like a one-page synopsis of the whole script, and then being able to build that up into a 3-sheet, which is going to be a much more detailed version of that, and then maybe move that up to treatment, which is like a 20-ish page version of that. We should be able to work with stories at any size. As a writer in Hollywood, you're not only just the person that writes the document, you are the script department. And especially in TV, you're going to have to be doing lots of changes and lots of adjustment on the fly. Like a mechanic, you're going to be trusted or relied upon to be able to pull stories apart and patch them back together and make them work, incorporating lots of different people's notes and visions, and a lot of cooks in the kitchen that you need to sort of navigate. And these are all just like the tough but necessary skills of working in this career. So we recommend try to learn to start with logline and use that to guide the construction of everything else. And you can use that to assess, have I drifted too far from my original goals? And am I making sure to deliver on the promises that I have made? Next, we have Sketchbook, which is step 2 we mentioned, is that unsorted kind of collage of all your ideas, inspirations, and influences. Next up from that, we have Story Beats, which is essentially the events of the plot written out underneath the structural headings that correspond to the proper structural headings for that section of the script. And you don't have to include every single scene, but you want to include all the major stuff. Even if there's still some gaps or holes in it, meaning maybe you say in the middle, we have a big food fight. I don't have the scene on either side of it, so I don't know how we get to the food fight, or how we emerge from that scene of the food fight and continue in the story, but you know it's going to be there, and that's going to be helpful moving into scene cards, which is our next step. In scene cards, you're going to be expanding the Story Beats outline into a full paragraph for every scene in the script, and also estimating out page counts. So we're going to try to have this really clear guide that tells us what each scene is, how many pages you expect it to take, exactly what's happening in it, and how you're going to transition from moment to moment. So you're going to be filling in those gaps from the Story Beats. All right, so plenty of work ahead of us, but hopefully we're excited, and you see this amount of work and you're like, yes, that seems like a mountain I want to climb. That seems like I want to tackle this challenge. We have a question in the chat. What if we use AI/GPT to write our scripts? Is that forbidden practice? Well, it's not forbidden, and this is still kind of like a weird murky territory for writing, but I will just warn you, it will not be very good. I've seen the stuff that ChatGPT can write, and it's probably going to be pretty obvious that it was not written by a person. I mean, you can use it maybe to help improve paragraphs or things like that. I've seen it be more effective for like editing and proofreading. But if you're having it write whole scenes for you, it's going to suck. So I just wouldn't recommend it, probably. But maybe consider using it for that kind of like a second pair of eyes just on the sentence level, how you can improve sentence by sentence. Maybe it could be useful for that. Okay, so let's get into loglines. Loglines are the gist of your story distilled down to a sentence, or in this case, 2, because we have a series logline and a pilot logline. The series logline tells us the kind of overall arc of what the entire show is supposed to be. The pilot logline tells us what's happening in that very first episode. A logline is going to imply visual action, so it shouldn't feel like it's a story about people sitting around thinking about stuff or discussing stuff, talking about stuff. It's people doing things. We want to get a good idea of what is that inciting incident, who is the main character, what do they want, what's in their way, what happens if they fail. Motivation, stakes, and urgency. So here's these 2 different types, and let's look at the differences. So feature loglines and pilot loglines are all about emphasizing the protagonist's goal, whereas the series logline is more about telling us about the world and the character, and the unique character situations, and just basics of the setting that are going to promise many different episodes, probably years of episodes. A story engine is this idea that you should probably learn about, which is kind of it's not just one thing. A story engine is a combination of factors that is going to be the sort of fuel to power many seasons of stories within your world. It's a combination of character dynamics, the world that they're in, the challenges that they face, the opponents that are standing in their way. All of those things need to work together to feel like this could last for years. This is one piece of a theoretical story that could last for many years. Pilot logline is more like the feature logline. We want to know what's the inciting incident, who's the protagonist, what do they want, what's standing in their way, only on the basis of that very first half hour or hour of TV. You don't need to tell us any more about where it's going in the long term. The series logline tells us what the whole show is about. Pilot logline tells us what just this first episode is about. So the story engine isn't something that you can really write out, or it's not really something that you can quantify very easily. It becomes very clear when it's not there, I should say. And it should be very clear from the loglines that there is a strong one at play. It's going to be fusing your characters, story world, and situations, and it should feel like you're doing that in such a way as to generate continuous conflict that is going to last for years. A strong story engine suggests hundreds of hours, potentially, of TV. So don't worry about writing this out, like I said, but if this is like something that will come up in your notes, if it doesn't feel like there's a strong story engine, well, then it might just sort of seem like this is a movie. How could there possibly be more story after this? So that's that central conflict of your show that will sustain the series, focus on the character and the story world, and promise many episodes. Pilot logline template looks more like this. When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes, or ticking clock. So, inciting incident being also known as the catalyst. It's the kind of event that kicks off your story, or at least that episode of TV. So it may be the thing that kicks off the whole arc of the narrative. You know, it might in some comedy shows we see like it's Jim's first day at the office, right? But in some cases, I think in the actual show, The Office, it starts with everybody already being there. There isn't really like that very strong sense of inciting incident for the whole show. Similarly to shows like The Simpsons, right? Where it's like, okay, there's an inciting incident for this episode, but it's not like Bart is born, and that's what starts the story of The Simpsons overall. So pilot logline, try to give us that sense of what is kicking off this particular story. Give us an adjective for the protagonist, and we're not always going to try to be picking the most obvious one. Try not to pick the most obvious ones. Try to give us a good idea of maybe something your main character is struggling with, or something that gives them a unique limitation or a challenge, or maybe a unique tactic that they'll use to approach solving their problems. Choose your adjective carefully. Don't just go with the first thing that jumps into your head, especially if it's something we would definitely assume. A determined detective needs to stop a serial killer. Well, it's like, I hope that every detective is determined. I know they're not, but like, we would just assume that unless you told us otherwise. Now, a lazy detective, that would be something that would be noteworthy and, you know, a totally different story. So pick your adjective carefully. Must conflict, that's telling us what's going to happen in the middle of the episode. That's like the meat of the show. And before stakes or ticking clock, well, stakes are essentially the question, what happens if they fail? Ticking clock is whatever event or story device is forcing your characters to act on some kind of urgent time frame. So we're clarifying their urgency and motivation here. So we'll look at some examples. These are not super easy to write, so don't expect to just nail this on the first try. Many people spend at least days, if not a couple weeks, trying to really nail this down. It's okay if it takes a little while to get the final version, and ultimately, once your script is done, you might look at the logline and see that this doesn't really reflect the story that I wanted to, or that I ended up telling, so you may need to change the logline to reflect that story at the end. Or it may be that you have drifted too far from your original goals and you need to change the story to fit that logline better. So it's a tool. It's a very useful tool. And it's important, I think, to hash out at least a working version of it at the beginning. Let's talk time slot and format. So we are picking half hour or hour. I know that other formats do exist. We have 15-minute shows like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, sort of like Adult Swim style shows. We have 70-plus minute kind of limited series and things like that. But for the purposes of a portfolio, typically you're going to want to have either half-hour or full-hour pilots, because that's what most fellowships and contests are looking for and will accept, and that's what most showrunners are looking to read. Or that's how your manager knows, once you get a manager, to whom you should be submitting, and also like the kind of people that would want to read your pilot. It's just easier to determine that if you are writing half hour or full hour. So for the purposes of this course, we'll be picking between those two. Half hour is usually comedic and very episodic. There's lots of distinctions from that. I mean, in the past, it's been called, it's been sort of synonymous with comedy. Half hour equals comedy, hour long equals drama. That's not always the case, and there's lots of exceptions nowadays. I mean, we've seen examples of horror, dark comedy, thriller, dramedy, or even drama in half-hour format, so you can do whatever you want in half hour, but you should just know what the expectations are, and the script is going to be 30 to 34, 35, maybe at the most pages long. Then we have full hour, which is going to be 60 to 65 pages long. You can basically, again, do any genre with this except for straight comedy. The only genre that I've never seen an example of, and I don't think people believe this would really work, is hour-long comedy. If there is going to be an hour-long comedic show, it's going to have some other element, like something like Shameless, which is sort of like a dramedy in the hour-long format. Or, you know, we're going to have some flavor of other thing going on, probably, if it is hour-long. Time slot and format. So you can see here's just some page and minute counts of both broadcast and premium cable shows, just to give you the sense that there is a lot of distinction here, but you can also see the page and minute rule does not exactly apply. Like Broad City, 30 pages, 22-minute pilot. So it's like all we can really do is aim for what works the most. We can't really account for things like, well, my characters are going to talk really fast, so I know it has to be more pages. Just aim for 30 to 35 for half hour, 60 to 65 for full hour, and you can't go wrong with that. Genre. So we should know what genre you are writing in, and we should kind of be familiar with it. I wouldn't write in a genre that you've never seen before, or don't watch, or don't like, or don't respect, or any of these things. You should be able to pretty quickly identify 2 genres at the most for both your own story and also any of these other, shows that we have on TV. 2 at the most is just to prevent this from seeming like a hodgepodge soup of nothing. It's going to seem like you don't know what the show is if you say it's an action, western, fantasy comedy. We kind of just need to limit it to 2 things in order to explain what is the main point of this. What is the emotional experience that we're offering the audience? So we can look at this list right here and very quickly assess just 2 genres at the most for all of these. What do we have in the top left? Game of Thrones, fantasy, drama. Big Bang Theory, comedy. The Walking Dead, that's a horror drama. How I Met Your Mother, comedy. Supernatural, that's sci-fi fantasy. We have Vampire Diaries, that's like fantasy drama, I think. Modern Family, comedy. The Mentalist, that is a crime procedural. Family Guy, half-hour animated comedy. You see how we can just pick 1 or 2 things for all of these. And there's nothing wrong with just having 1 genre. You don't have to mash it up with something. So procedurals are going to be status quo-based shows, which we'll talk about in just 1 second. Status quo meaning everything resets every week. I know there's some exceptions to that, and they do change casts over time, but generally procedurals are hour-long, and they are going to follow an institution of some kind, a job like police, medical, or legal. And every week we're understanding that we're going to see a new job for the people in that profession, a new mission, a new patient, a new case to tackle, and it's sort of going to be thing of the week. That's how procedurals work. Thing of the week. Animated are usually going to be half-hour and comedy or action adventure. Again, there's a lot of exceptions to that nowadays, and we don't really write an animated pilot any differently, so you can just sort of say your pilot is animated no matter what. I mean, it might raise this question, why are you doing this animated when it feels like it doesn't need to be? But it's ultimately up to you, and you can kind of do what you want with that. Okay, so shall we... I want to just pause for any questions on what we've talked about so far, especially in terms of genre, time slot, and formats. Any questions on what we've talked about? You can feel free to either use the text chat or raise your hands, and I will call on you. And if there's no questions, we will move on. If you're typing a question, feel free to continue and put it in the chat, and I will check back in just a second to make sure we get them all. Okay, so I'm going to get into series logline and check back for questions in a moment. So, series logline, I think we should look at some examples of this and talk just a little more about this. Emphasis on those compelling characters and, and intriguing worlds that they exist within. A TV series is sort of expected to build on that initial concept over time, and the concept might evolve a little bit, but we're not really going to have to worry about that because you're not writing multiple episodes, we're not planning out multiple seasons, we're just writing the pilot, nothing more. There's no point in writing beyond the pilot, so definitely don't do that. So try to emphasize what is the world this takes place in, and what is especially if this is a status quo-based show where everything resets every week, what is the kind of conflict that your characters will be getting in every week? A film embraces that core concept and tries to deliver on that through the 2-hour running time, whereas a TV show is like a setup for a series of situations, a series of episodes that are going to all utilize that concept, but perhaps build from it as the show goes on. Series logline should make it clear the show has an audience. It should feel like a show that anybody would want to watch. Try to give us a main character or a compelling world that are rich with story potential, ideally both. And try to make sure that story engine is clear. Whatever is going to be generating conflict through a bunch of episodes using variations on that, basic type of story problem for your character in every show. We also want to kind of delineate between premise and status quo. Is this going to be a singular journey, a premise pilot that is like a long movie like Lost or things like that, like Breaking Bad, or is this a series of episodic situations like your Family Guy or your Law and Order, where you can tune in any week and you'll always be able to watch without getting confused? So premise pilot, you have to watch those episodes in order to follow the story. The characters are going to change quite a lot over the course of multiple seasons. Sometimes people call these like serialized shows. as opposed to status quo, which every episode is going to reset the characters back to how things were, the way things were, the status quo. You can tune into any episode in any season and still generally follow the story of the episode, and the characters aren't going to change as much if they change at all. Maybe very slowly. We have a question in the chat. Did we skip comps? No, I think comps are coming up in a few slides. Or do we not have a slide for that? Maybe we don't. Good question. Maybe we did skip comps. Let's go back to the genre page and I can talk comps really quick. So, comps. What are comps? Comps stands for comparables or comparisons. And this is going to be 2 shows that you pick that are kind of like yours. In an effort to communicate what your goals are and what the tone of your show is, mostly. So basically, if your show is really serious, don't pick comedy or comedic comps. If your show is really funny, you do want to pick comedy comps. And just to give us that basic clue of the kind of experience that we're in for, and we can use that to help assess if you're meeting your goals. So if it doesn't feel at all like, whatever, Beetlejuice meets Pushing Daisies, then we'll let you know in the feedback. And you want to try to pick comps that aren't incredibly obscure. You don't earn points for someone not knowing what your comps are. You only kind of lose them. So try not to confuse your audience with the comps. At least one of your comps should be a TV show. The other one can be a video game or a movie or a play or something, or a book or something like that if you really want. Ideally, they're both TV shows, but only one of them really has to be. There's not really an exact science to comps. You might think of it sort of like the world of the first thing, but with the genre, tone, or style or approach of the second thing. So we might say, it's like Band of Brothers. Okay, that tells us this is a World War II drama type show. Band of Brothers meets Fringe. Oh, okay, cool. So it's like World War II science fiction case of the week type of show. That's what I would imagine that to be. Band of Brothers meets Fringe. That sounds pretty cool. Someone should write that. But in any case, you see that you kind of just have to do your best with this. And you might write a couple possibilities for comps. Like, we want to ultimately narrow it down to 2, not more than 2, because we want to avoid that same problem of making it just seem like a hodgepodge of nothing soup. You want to avoid that by just narrowing it down as much as you can. But then again, you may have ideas. You're like, okay, these are my main 2 comps, but maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. You can list a couple possibilities if you're just not sure yet. All right, that's comps. Let's see. Should we... Yeah, because we have a bit of a quicker class today because we're ending these 10 minutes early. I'm going to maybe just open the floor on any questions as to how to write a series logline or a pilot logline. Feel free to raise your hand or to type in the chat. And if you are in our Discord server, you can scroll up and you can see a bunch of examples of series and pilot loglines that we've posted here. It looks like we have a question from Taylor. Come on up, Taylor.
Hey, yeah, so I really struggle with, I feel like I'm okay at, like, a series logline. Pilot loglines are where I get stuck. I feel like it ends up being far too similar to the series logline. And it is something I see a lot, like, when reading, like, amateur scripts, is that pilot loglines do kind of just feel like a very small extension of the series logline. How do you avoid that, or should you even try to avoid that, or how different do you try to aim for your pilot logline to be from your series logline?
Sure, great question. Thank you for asking. So the answer is if you're writing a status quo show, these things should not be similar at all. So they're going to be extremely different because a status quo show, again, remember, that shows that every week it comes back to normal, to the status quo, to how things were before. Then your logline is going to be a description of just the very general situation that the characters are in, or the types of situations they're going to be getting in from week to week. And then your pilot logline is going to be specifically what is the first thing of the week. Does that make sense? So in status quo, let's look at an example. I have one up here. Don't I? I could have sworn I had a slide of that. Am I crazy, Nacho? Didn't we have it? Here, okay, wait. Here we go. Here it is. All right, so let's look at the middle one here, Blackish, right? Status quo comedy from, like, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. I forget exactly when this was on. A black family man struggles to gain a sense of cultural identity while raising his kids in a predominantly white upper-middle-class neighborhood. So that's definitely not what the pilot logline would look like. The pilot logline would look like, when he gets invited to a barbecue, he needs to blank and blank and blank. It would be the specific situation of the week, which is under the umbrella of the type of situations that you described in the series logline. So in status quo shows, these should be very different. They should not have any overlap because we are describing an instance of this situation, or like one of many situations from this setup. So we need to be much more specific in that pilot logline as to what we are doing only in this first hour. What is the thing of the week? Now, in premise shows, this can be a little trickier. Let's look at Breaking Bad down here. A high school chemistry teacher diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer turns to manufacturing and selling meth in order to secure his family's future. Well, that sort of describes the pilot and the whole show. You're right, there is definitely crossover there. So in this case, we would probably, again, need to get more specific. What does he need to do in the first episode? When Walt gets his diagnosis, he needs to get the RV, and he needs a partner, right? So we need to find the exact things that you're doing in the first episode that are not going to be things that we have to worry about in the whole arc of the series, because that's going to all be sort of like things that can only unfold after these first events have occurred. So you need to just get laser focused on their objectives in the pilot, which are going to almost never, like if you focus it that way, you shouldn't have too much crossover. So like I would, if this is the series logline for Breaking Bad, for the pilot logline, I might say something like, it might start the same way. When a high school chemistry teacher gets diagnosed with cancer, he contacts his prior student and must blank and blank in order to get their equipment together to start dealing meth. Something like that, right? Where we're just detailing how the story begins, only the things that are happening within the scope, the limited scope of this first hour. Does that clear that up, or does that help at all, Taylor? Or do you still have questions?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thanks.
Sure. Great question. Other questions on anything we've talked about, or especially on writing series or pilot loglines, because this is what the rest of class is going to be looking at. Hopefully we all have sketchbooks open, and you guys have been working to write out these early versions of these loglines. If you are still developing your idea, maybe you have a perfect logline already and you don't need to share, that's fine. But if you would like feedback on it, today is a day that you'll be able to get that. And then over the course of this week, you'll be able to refine this as much as you can. We have a full week to work on this until we're going to move to story beats next. What is it? Saturday? No. What is today? Next Friday. Okay, if we have no more questions, I would say be getting ready to copy and paste your logline into the chat. I'll let you know in just a second. Oh, Carmen says, does the beat sheet apply to this? Apply to what? So can you specify, or maybe feel free to unmute if you want to or to raise your hand if you'd like to ask out loud. Hi, Carmen.
Okay, so in my sketchbook, and as you know, I've been working on this pharmakia since I started with you guys, and I just haven't focused on it. So I have a beat sheet, I think it's Blake Snyder's beat sheet. So does the pilot fall into that paradigm of those beats, or is it different?
Oh, so we're just talking, you mean we're talking about just the structure of the episode, not the logline?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Okay, we'll get there.
That's okay. No, but just to answer your question, yes, a pilot will use the same beats we're always using the same beats no matter what we're writing, at least in my method that I use and teach. So whether you're writing feature, pilot, play, book, anything, we're still using 3-act structure, which is going to have, our introduction, our catalyst, your act breaks, all that same stuff will apply to pilots too. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But the shape of it looks different, which is what we'll be mostly talking about next week.
Okay. I'm still learning this after all this time. Thanks.
Sure. That's okay. Yeah, so next week is all about structure. So we're glad to break down the difference between half-hour and full-hour structure, looking at where all those different beats are going to rest.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions on what we've talked about so far, specifically in loglines? If not, let's start posting and sharing them. So if you are not on Discord, we would recommend you join our Discord server, and you can post these in our classroom chats. Let's post them. So make sure to include the stuff: title, format, genre, series, and pilot logline. It's okay if you don't have both. You only have one or the other, or something like that. Or you're not sure, you have a few different ideas. You can post just whatever you have. Don't post more than 3 ideas, though. I guess it'll just be too hard to read and get to them all. Thank you for sharing, Carmen. We will let you guys, I'll give you guys like a minute to post these, and then I will start calling them out. I'm going to bring you up on the stage to speak out loud and to answer questions, so be ready to speak on the mic. Thank you for sharing, Cappuccino. All right, I'll give you guys like a minute to post these. All right, I think I'm going to start at the top, and we'll just begin with Carmen, and we'll work our way down. I'll get to as many people as we can. So as we're working with everyone, you can continue to add them to the queue. I would guess we would probably be able to do 2 more than we currently have. After that, I wouldn't be able to guarantee that we'd get to everyone, but feel free to throw yours on the pile if you'd like. I'm going to open up a blank document so we can mark these things up. Okay, let's start with Carmen. With Pharmakia. Come on, back up, Carmen.
Okay, so you guys have already helped me develop this a lot. So if it looks good, after I learn the structure part, the shape of, what you were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think because I've been writing the features, I feel like I can't learn this as easily because I'm accustomed to something else now.
Sure, I understand.
So, yeah, so, if it looks good, hey,
Can you read it out for us?
Okay, let me go back up there. Okay, the title is Pharmakia, and which actually is translated to sorcery in the Greek.
Okay.
The format is a pilot, which is, I think it would have to be 60 minutes because I have a lot of actors. That's what I based it on, the length of the pilot.
Okay.
Fantasy drama, Buffy meets Devs, series logline, a pill-popping teenage girl with astral projection powers must destroy the demons behind a pharmaceutical doomsday plot. Pilot logline, a defiant 16-year-old girl must learn to harness her astral projection powers to defeat Nemrak, but that's only if, the girl that runs the fantasy class isn't using that name. It's my name backwards. A drug-dispensing demon working double time to kill her family.
Okay, thanks for this. So first of all, I think you can name the character that if you want. I don't think Amanda's using that, totally up to you. But regardless of that, the series logline looks quite good. Let's read it again. So, a pill-popping teenage girl with astral projection powers must destroy the demons behind a pharmaceutical doomsday plot. Okay, so that's going to take a couple years of show to accomplish. I totally understand. I like the description of the main character. I imagine that maybe the sort of pill popping might mean kind of like addiction problems, or it might just kind of mean that this is her link to the pharmaceutical doomsday plot. So I see the connection there. I don't think you need to explain it way too much. we are kind of, the only thing I'm not seeing is why she needs to do this. You were just saying she must. But I'm guessing that maybe she's the only one that can stop them or something like that, and that's why she needs to. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could try to convey that somehow.
Just an idea. That's the one thing that I'm not seeing here. But the series logline generally looks really good. I mean, ideally we'd have that sense of. I mean, I think I see what you're saying. I know what the stakes are. They're going to destroy the world. That's a doomsday plot, and so I understand the urgency of the situation. I'm just like, why her? But then again, it's not a huge deal. If you can express that in just a couple words, then it's fine. If you really can't figure out a way, then it's not a big deal. Let's look at the pilot logline, though, because I was seeing some issues here. So, a defiant 16-year-old girl must learn to harness her astral projection powers to defeat Nemrak, a drug-dispensing demon, working double time to kill her family. What does it mean to be working double time to kill her family? I'm not sure why you phrased it that way.
Well, I don't know. I can rephrase it.
Okay. Because, I mean, it's sort of just like, if a demon's trying to kill your family, we don't really need to say, well, he's trying really hard. Like, we assume he would be trying really hard, so I just don't think you need it. The other thing is, I don't think she's going to defeat Nemrak in the pilot, is she? Isn't that the big bad guy?
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right.
So the pilot logline is like, what is the first challenge along the road that is going to lead us towards that ultimate confrontation? So it might be something like she must learn, and maybe by the end of the pilot she does really learn to harness these powers. Maybe within the first episode she can learn to do that better. But in order to do some smaller, more achievable goal within the scope of the episode, maybe she needs to, I don't know, get a crystal that's going to allow her to astral project or something like that. Maybe that's the plot of the pilot, or the crux of the pilot logline. Do you see how you can just sort of like narrow the scope and shrink the scope down and tell us within this first hour of TV, what is the first big challenge that she needs to overcome?
Okay, so part of the irony of it is that it's a particular pill that she takes, part of her addiction, that actually enables her to travel these areas.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I mean, I'm sure that there's a way that could work in the story. Are you saying then, in that case, there's lots of people that can do this, and it's not only her?
Well, for some reason it is only her, but I have to figure it out.
Okay. Maybe you just need to do some more thinking on that in that case. But if you may or may not need to go deeper into that in the logline, that may be just something that we unveil in the process of this or in the course of the story. I would say for pilot logline, we want to focus on a goal. So give your character a really achievable, understandable goal that. It's okay. It's also fine if they fail at their goal in the pilot episode, but basically we need to know what are they trying to accomplish that we can reasonably understand if they've done that thing or not within the first hour. And so we need to shrink that scope down and find a concrete objective for your main character.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And if there's a central relationship, consider how you might bring that into the pilot logline too, because a lot of times the first step is that central relationship. You know, it's like the chemistry teacher needs to team up with his former student in order to make and deal drugs. And in that case, the relationship, in order for the story to happen, we need to set that up first. So maybe your pilot goal could be centered around a relationship. You just haven't mentioned any other characters besides the main character and I guess the villain. So maybe that might help you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any questions, Carmen?
No, not yet.
Okay. Nice work with this. Just tune up that pilot logline a little bit and you'll be in good shape.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to our next one. Cappuccino. With a fantasy show. Looks like a couple different options for maybe 2 different versions of this. I hope we can hear his mic. I've invited you up. Come on up, Cappuccino.
Hey, can you hear me?
Cappuccinoco, actually, not Chino. Yes, I hear you fine.
Cool.
All right, so tell us what do we have here?
It's a fantasy medieval. It's just just thinking of it now. Well, all day actually, but it's like I haven't actually written anything down. But now, I don't know whether to do it more seriously, like a more serious show, or more comedy. I'm actually more leaning with Blackadder, Merlin meets Blackadder one actually.
Okay.
I might actually want to do that one.
Have you written a lot of scripts before?
No, I've started a few, but I only finished one feature length. I haven't done a TV show before, so
Okay,
it'll be a great opportunity.
your first ever pilot. I would recommend the half-hour version in that case because it's going to be
Okay, cool.
half as much work to do, right? As opposed to you just half as much work right off the bat just makes it easier, more manageable. It's less scenes. It's like 12 to 15 scenes. So just to get an understanding of the format, I'd recommend the half-hour version, which would probably be comedy. It doesn't have to be, but like usually we'd expect the half-hour version to be comedic. So up to you.
Okay, cool.
So are these two different kind of log lines for both versions of the story? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So just do number 2 then. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look at number 2. Can you read this out for us?
Yeah. A newly qualified blacksmith wants to set up his own shop in a rundown part of the kingdom. Him and fools he hires manage to break Excalibur, the sword. Must then go on the journey to fix the sword before the young king of the kingdom's position gets questioned. Very wordy.
Yeah. That's okay. So let me just make sure I understand. A newly qualified blacksmith wants to set up his own shop in a rundown part of the kingdom. The problem is he and the fools he hires managed to break Excalibur. Managed, meaning before the episode began?
Managers.
Manage,
Sorry,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so try
Managers.
to stay in present tense at all times, or else it seems like you're saying it's something that happened before the show started, which we generally, if it sounds like we'd want to watch him do that. So I would guess that happens in the pilot. Okay, they must go on a journey to fix the sword before the young king of the kingdom. We don't need to say king of the kingdom. Before the young king's position gets questioned. Meaning, what exactly?
So it's like King Arthur but without the sword, so his position gets questioned, like he's no longer in power, kind of thing. And
you mean to say that if King Arthur was revealed to no longer have Excalibur, he would no longer be king?
Yes.
That's in the sense that like people would riot and revolt, or in the sense that magically he would die, or what do you mean exactly?
Like other members of the family or whoever wants to take control instead, because he's young.
Okay.
And meek, I guess.
Okay.
Kind of thing. I'm still figuring stuff out.
That's okay. Yeah, these questions are just to like help. You don't have to have answers to everything, and it may be that you just need to do more thinking. So it's always fine to say I'm not sure yet, or I just need to do some more work on that, or anything along those lines. But so before the young king's position gets questioned, this doesn't really feel like a series logline as much. Is the whole show him trying to fix the sword?
Yes.
Like it takes years of show to fix the sword?
I guess not. No.
Okay. So that's what the series logline is. I think what you're saying is this is about a young blacksmith who rises through the ranks in the kingdom, right? Or no?
Don't know.
Okay. That's all right. It sounds like this might be like season 1 might be about how do we fix Excalibur, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then after that,
That's
he
what I'm
becomes
thinking.
like the royal blacksmith. And now that he's the royal blacksmith, there will be some other big problem that he needs to solve in that season. Is that sounding about right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the series logline is probably about, it is called Journeyman anyway. So it's like about young blacksmith is trying to become the best blacksmith he's trying to become like the King Arthur's blacksmith. I guess is what the ultimate goal is, right? So I'd probably think of the series logline in those terms. That's what we're going to be doing throughout the whole show. We're going to be watching this guy improve and build up his resources and reputation over time, and every season will have its own kind of like main problem that he needs to solve. That is probably going to be, smithing related. I'm guessing it's like I like that you've chosen a fantasy quest that is related to smithing. He is trying to fix a sword. So I get it. I just think that the series logline should give us that broader scope.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Let's look at pilot logline. So, and also make it one sentence, if you can. All right, pilot logline. Can you read this up?
A newly qualified journeyman and his dopey cousin visits kingdom for riches. When his first customer turns out to be the young king in disguise who needs his crown fixed before dinner with a wealthy Dutchman, the journeyman tries to cover the fact that he made the king's crown worse. So, the TV series of Blackadder is always it's about what's his name?
Rowan
Rowan
Atkinson.
Atkinson.
Yeah, I've seen Blackadder.
Yeah. So I'm kind of doing that kind of thing where it's like every episode is like things gets worse and he's trying to fix and cover things up for the king. Kind of thing.
I see. I like that, but that doesn't seem like it involves the Excalibur plotline, does it?
No, because the Excalibur is like the whole season 1, I guess, and I think episode 1 is just to introduce the king and journeyman, how they meet.
Oh, okay. So if Excalibur doesn't play a role in the pilot, you might just want to revise the series logline so you don't even need it, because that's just an example of one of the many challenges that he will face, and it doesn't come up in the pilot episode. It doesn't really help us. It's just sort of making a promise that you won't be able to fulfill, because 99%, it's your first pilot. It's probably not going to be a TV show. Most pilots do not end up being TV shows. Of course, this is nothing against you, but like, you see what I mean? That you need to be able to deliver on everything that you set up in these log lines. So if we make promises that then you don't include, we're just going to be like, oh, I was kind of looking forward to seeing that. So I think it sounds a little more like your series logline is like, a young blacksmith rises slowly through the ranks of a fantasy kingdom, something like that. And then your pilot logline, maybe we'll do the crown for the pilot, in which case it would be a newly qualified judge. So we don't need to have the setup for the setup. So I think you can lose the first sentence. It's nice that you have, a newly qualified journeyman and his dopey cousin. I like that. I get the characters, but you would probably want to, again, condense this to one sentence so we don't need extra setup at the beginning. So when a journeyman blacksmith and his dopey cousin's first customer turns out to be the king in disguise,
Right.
or maybe something like when they accidentally ruin their first client's crown, their first client, the king's crown. Maybe that's the sort of inciting incident that you start with. So when they accidentally do this, cause this problem, they now must blank before blank. So try to set it up along those lines. It's going to look like when inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. And when we say must conflict, that's like you want to give us that really clear indication. Oh, sorry, this is way too big. Really clear indication of what we're doing in the middle of the episode, like the Act 2, like the Act 2 is the movie, or is the show, as we often say. So try to give us the sense of what we're doing in the middle. He must blank, that's going to be like the majority of the episode. So I'm from what I see here, where is it? They must cover the fact that he made the king's crown worse. So maybe it's something like they have a limited amount of time in order to fix the crown or to get a new one to replace the old one, or something like that. When we say must conflict or else stakes, or before ticking clock, that's that kind of extra device, like they only have 3 days to do this, or they only have until the king returns to do this, or they only have, whatever kind of is limiting them and adding urgency to the situation. So try to simplify this, streamline this a little bit, and start with the problem. So when a blacksmith's first customer turns out to be the king, or like when I think the problem is he messes up he ends up breaking it or something like that, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, he ends up making the crown worse, like the structure of the crown worse.
Okay.
Like he drops it, and then he's trying to cover it up before dinner time.
So would you say he ruins the crown?
Ruins, and he's maybe trying to find ways to glue it back together, or to trying to cover it up by making it shiny and making it look all right.
Okay.
And like he's just advising the king not to move his head a lot.
And this is all sort of taking place in one evening? Yes. Okay. So yeah, very classic British farce, British sitcom farce situation. I think it works great. I like the boundaries that you've drawn around it, and the fact that it takes place around this very a smaller event is a great, like, that's exactly what we're trying to do with shows like this. You're trying to give an example of the types of conflicts that the show will be about. Usually like kind of the most primordial example, like the most basic example of what we're trying to do here. So it's great that you've included the king as well. So hopefully that helps reduce it to one sentence, start with the problem, and then say, as a result of that problem, here's what our main character is going to have to do by this time, or before this happens.
Okay, got you. Yes.
Questions?
Yeah, if I want to make the Excalibur like main thing in the season, do I have to break it by episode 1 kind of thing?
Pretty much, yeah, because you're not going to get more episodes is the only thing. Like, we only are going to write a pilot, and then nobody was going to read beyond the pilot. They're going to make their choices of
That's true.
what to do with that show based on the pilot alone. So I wouldn't set anything up in these 2 log lines that is not going to play any role in the episode.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
Any other questions?
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Hope this helped.
Yeah. Cheers.
I love when people say cheers. I feel like I should hold up my pint. All right, so let's move on to Taylor with Bad Beat. Come on up, Taylor.
Cool.
Hey there. Why don't you tell us about this? What have we got here?
Yeah, so this is a drama called Bad Beat, 60-minute pilot. It is about a housewife who has basically just lived this domesticated lifestyle her entire adult life, getting a divorce and going through a brutal custody battle. She's left with nothing, and to be able to fund her legal expenses, she figures out a way to scam a high-stakes poker game.
All right, that sounds cool. Is this a kind of a crime drama, would you say, in that case?
Yeah, so my comparisons would be really Weeds, Breaking Bad, Ozark, with a poker angle.
Okay, let's definitely say crime in the genre then, because that's like people really like that kind of show, and we want to indicate to them that that's what this will include. Okay,
cool.
Why don't you start us off with the series logline?
In the midst of a brutal custody battle, a down-to-earth mom teams up with her card shark brother to scam a high-stakes poker game to fund her legal expenses.
I really like this. A down-to-earth mom teams up with her card shark brother to scam a high-stakes poker game to fund her legal expenses. And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I would leave this exactly as it is, but let me just ask a question. Is she sort of made aware of the poker game because of her brother? Is that her link to this? Like, or otherwise, how does she know about it?
Yeah, so basically, her brother, it's the poker game, it's a live streamed thing, like on Twitch at a casino, and her brother works in production on this poker game, and he has access to seeing all of the cards. When players are dealt their cards, they have to kind of tilt them up to a camera so they can overlay it onto the stream, show viewers what the cards are, and he has access to those. And so that's her link to it, is that he works in production on this thing.
Great. Yeah, I totally get it. I wouldn't change a thing about the series log. Oh, wait, actually, let me ask this. Is it going to take years to do this one poker game, or how is this what's the engine here?
Yeah, so basically initially I would say this would last for about a season, is that her goal is basically after the divorce, she's left with very little money. She has about $5,000 left. She only has access to these really shitty lawyers who fuck up the custody battle. She finds one that her ex-husband is extremely rich, has the best legal team, and so she realizes she needs to get an extremely expensive legal team. She finds one who basically wants $400,000 up front. So that's kind of the baseline of what she needs to get this going, is to get $400,000. And so initially, and it's kind of introduced in the beginning, is that there are some larger players in Las Vegas who start confronting her of, how the fuck are you so good at this? We've never seen you here before. And kind of a little misogyny of, you're a woman, how are you doing this? And so she kind of gets involved with, it's mentioned, or I wouldn't say mentioned, but kind of in the outline I have right now, is that she gets confronted by people who are implied to be in the, gangs or mafia, who want to start backing her play in this because of how good she is. So that gets brought up. So initially the engine is she needs $400,000. And that would probably go on, I would say, about a season, and then start kind of introducing more crime, mafia connections, her starting to kind of move past this whole getting the money just for legal expenses and kind of realizing she's been stuck in this domestic lifestyle her entire adult life, and this is kind of fun for her.
I see. Okay, so it sounds that in that case that your series logline, although it's well written, it isn't really giving that full picture of what the show is. Whereas it sounds like the trajectory of the whole show is something like, although it starts in this custody battle, this down-to-earth mom teams up with their card shark brother to sort of rise to the top of the world of underground poker. Oh, they're not underground, I guess. Just to rise to the top of underground, or I keep saying it, to rise to the top of the poker world through cheating. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, like now that you kind of mention it, I honestly feel like that series logline may be better suited as a pilot logline, because they do start scamming this game in the pilot, and kind of introducing the crime angle and like larger picture may be better for a pilot log or for the series logline.
Well, let me ask you this: does she have to learn to actually play, or no?
Yeah,
she does.
So that would be kind of where I'm seeing it, is like that would be like the second to third act. Is that second act would be like her being drunk and just totally beat down from this situation. Her brother tells her, come to the casino with me, I'm working, you can get some free drinks. She goes, and then she realizes, like, there's a shitload of money moving through this place, and a lot of these people, like, it's just insane how much money is moving through here. And then, like, third act would be, her really learning and watching these, like, videos and streams, and more of the convincing of the brother, let's do this situation.
Okay, so, but it sounds like this is not the only game that they're going to be sharking in the show. It sounds like she's going to have to play a bunch of games in order to, she doesn't have to become an expert exactly, but she has to be able to pass as a player, right?
Yeah, so that would be kind of like in the third act is, that does, like, kind of where I see it is, that gets brought up, like, you're never going to be able to do this. Like nobody's going to fall for this shit coming from you. Mm-hmm. And then where, like, I envision this ending is that, that they do this, it's a success, they get, like, she wins like 25-30 grand off of this game, and then her brother is moved out of this room and into a different casino, which is much higher stakes.
Okay, but they're going to continue to do stuff like that in order to make a bunch of money. I see. Yeah. All right, so yeah, my thought is this sounds a little more like the pilot logline, to scamming this high stakes poker game. I guess to her it is high stakes at the beginning. We don't need to include the fact that the stakes get even higher after that, but for her it's very high stakes. So she teams up with her brother to win the game to fund her legal expenses. Yeah, this sounds a bit more like the pilot logline. Let me look at what you had for the pilot logline, though. Why don't you read this out?
Yeah, this one sucks. It's really vague. Needing an expensive lawyer for her custody battle, a timid mom finds that her card shark brother may be the key to affording a new legal team.
Maybe. So the sort of hypothetical, sort of wishy-washy, maybe we want to... You're being a little... I see what you're doing. You're being a little coy. It may be this. Well, it is that. You just have to tell us that it is. Mm-hmm. So her brother is the key. She teams up with him to do this. But this just feels like you're rehashing what was in the other logline. So I think cut the pilot logline that you have here, you rework the series logline as that, and then write a new series logline that's going to say something like, a down-to-earth mom and her brother maybe ascend through the ranks of competitive poker using underhanded tactics, something like that.
Awesome.
Make sense?
Perfect.
Questions?
No, that'd be it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you. Sounds like a cool show. Boop. Back to the audience. I just need my basketball slam dunk noise when I do that. Okay. Looks like we have one more. We probably have time for one or two more after we do Dan's, just so you guys know. We've been really efficient with these so far. Nice work on the stuff that we've seen shared so far. Hopefully this is getting your guys' gears turning and your brains are thinking of all the possibilities for how to revise what you have and continue to build this out and develop it over the next 6 weeks. I'm going to bring up Dan with Bad Robots. just like the production company. I've met at Bad Robot, haven't I? I'm fairly sure I've met there. Let's have Dan come up.
Hello.
Hi, Dan. What have we got here?
Well, we've got Bad Robot. It's an action. I guess you could call it a bit of a sci-fi. I'm not really finalizing how many pages it's going to be just yet. But
Okay.
it's got basic, and its comps are basically your sort of generic superhero. But I don't know. I kind of want to find a superhero story where the superhero goes down a bad path, but still tries to be a hero, even though the world thinks they're evil. And it's your typical Astro Boy, Mega Man type of character because it's a robot that just fights for everlasting peace.
Okay. Why don't you read out the logline for us?
After a heroic robot accidentally breaks the law of robotics and kills a human, she is branded a monster and must still save the world from an evil scientist bent on world domination while coming to terms with her crime.
All right. Thanks for that. So we'll start with just the series logline. After a heroic robot accidentally breaks the law of robotics and kills a human, I get you, she's branded a monster and must still save the world from an evil scientist bent on world domination. The only thing I'd lose from this is while coming to terms with her crime. That's such an internal process that has no kind of goalpost to it. The phrase "come to terms with" just doesn't work in loglines because it's just so in the character's head. So I would lose that.
I was kind of more going along the path of, is she going to fall to darkness herself?
Meaning what?
Meaning, yeah, I have the right to kill whoever I want. Humans don't like me, so why should I help them?
So I guess I wouldn't. I guess
that's probably just like a subplot, really.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if that quite fits into the series logline. That sounds like maybe it's just some of the internal consternation or the internal conflict that your character is facing. But I think we might be able to infer that from what you have in the logline. So I'd lose that last part, and then I think you're in pretty good shape here. All right, pilot logline. Read that for us. Go ahead.
After a stoic robot accidentally kills a human, she must save a city that loathes her from a villainous robot planning to unleash explosive terror upon said city.
Okay. So it has a little of what we talked about today, where the pilot logline is just kind of mostly the same as the series logline. That may not be a terrible thing, but let me just make sure that there's no other ways we can make it feel like, again, smaller scope, only within the context of this first episode. So a stoic robot hero accidentally kills a human. Yep, she must save a city that loathes her from a villainous robot planning to unleash explosive terror. So for this one, how does she actually need to, like, how would she go about saving the city? Does she have to? Is it like a big fight that she has to do, or are there things she has to collect?
The robot with the robot.
Right.
Well,
so
she has to.
Go ahead.
While wondering, you're fighting while the enemy robot is going. Yeah, you could save these people, but do you really want to after the way they treated you for one little mistake?
So, in order to defeat this robot, it's just a straight-up melee fight, or is there some other process that she needs to, like, I would think, a lot of the time, the villain can't always be defeated by just punching them.
Right, by brute force.
Right. It might be, we need to build a team to take down this opponent, or we need to get some magic doodad that can defeat them, or we need to level up enough.
It's more like she just keeps going. It's more like she just keeps stopping herself, saying, this doesn't matter anymore.
It's just
it's like her own internal problems are externalizing, where she's like, she raises her weapon, and then she's like, I don't care.
Wow. But wouldn't then maybe a better
and then
focus...
she eventually does care.
In the pilot?
Yeah.
So she goes... It just feels like kind of a quick journey, whereas I thought you were sort of saying that was going to be the whole season would almost be her dealing with that problem of, now people treat me badly, and I'm not sure what my role is anymore.
It's going to be an extended thing. The world is supposedly very stringent, where it's like, you kill a human, you are slated to be scrapped.
Okay. So for the pilot logline, I mean, you're going to just maybe, if you can get more specific with her objective, like if we just say she must save the city or must defeat this robot, I would ask how. Does she have to go underground and get the magic lamp that can defeat him? Does she
underground
need to...
way? Yes, go to the underground, find robots from the underground willing to use more dirty methods.
Oh, okay. Maybe she has to team up with a different character, or she has to, make an alliance with somebody to defeat this robot, or she needs to get somebody's help, or she needs to get something, or she needs to... I would just try to be a little more specific in terms of this conflict. What is the actual objective? For the purposes of the pilot, what is the thing that's going to allow her to beat the villain? And maybe if it is all sort of mental, like if the problems, that's the thing that's holding her back is most, or did I say her, his? I'm not sure if it is her. If the things that are holding her back are mostly internal, then we'll need some sort of external goalpost so that we can understand, okay, how in the pilot is she going to overcome those internal problems? And it might be like she needs to prove her innocence in court. Or she needs to, maybe the first episode is something like she approaches a PR company to try to help fix her image, and that will fix her mental state. Something like that. You see how we can externalize that internal problem by adding.
It's more like she goes to an undercity where robots who have been abandoned by humans, where she feels like that is where now I belong.
Oh, great. Okay, if that's what we're doing.
Would anyone want to help me help and maybe clear our names?
Oh, great. Okay, I would definitely reframe the logline around that journey then, because that's a much more specific and concrete goal. I can imagine the character having to go to that robot city and having to, make her case to them. And this first conflict is going to be one of many conflicts in this world, but this is like the very first step. This is like the first chapter in this journey. Although it does say you're unsure if this is status quo or premise yet. You're still working on that?
It's semi-status quo. The characters emotionally can grow, but if a robot character is like not destroyed but has pieces of them fallen off, they'll be fine for the next episode to be a recurring villain again, unless they die.
I would say status quo then.
All right,
same basic situation.
Semi-status quo, but there is actual character growth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, status quo shows still can have.
Explain.
That's okay. So status quo shows can still have gradual character growth, but we can't say it's sort of, kind of, a little bit. We have to just sort of pick one or the other.
All right.
So there you go. Yeah, reframe that pilot logline with that more specific journey and goalpost about the whole underground city thing, because that sounds cool and we want to hear about that, and also just it helps us picture what we're doing in that first episode. And your series logline sounds pretty good to me, but I would just cut the cutting to terms with everything internal. We can mostly leave as subtext.
All right.
And we will kind of infer from the external action.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. Any questions?
No.
All right. Thanks for sharing, Dan.
Thank you for the help.
Hope to see Dan back next week with finalized loglines and a full sketchbook ready to work more on the Bad Robot story. Okay, we have a question from Jay in the chat. What if I have a singular concept like a location where different characters in different episodes go through different situations, conflicts, and journeys in each episode? How would loglines and pilot loglines work? So, like an anthology, I guess, is what you're saying? So we're going to look for whatever's going to link those stories together. So, and let's, what was that show on HBO? Is it called The Lost Room? Or something like that? Or The Last Room? Maybe, no, The Lost Room was a different show. There was like an HBO show that took place in like a hotel, and every episode was like some new weird thing happens in this hotel. Maybe somebody can find the Room 104, was that it? Thank you, Taylor. And so that might be an example of this, but it's all going to kind of be linked by the location that they're in, which is going to lead to similar situations week by week. It's like, I think it was like sort of sci-fi fantasy-based, like Twilight Zone situations in that show. So what you're talking about is writing an anthology, which is not something we're covering in this boot camp, although I did write on Creepshow, which was an anthology. But anthologies are more like a series of movies. But if you were to write a logline for that, it would be whatever is the commonality between these stories, whatever is the shared situation, setting, characters, and the types of conflicts that we're going to be getting into week after week. You might say, like an anthology that follows a series of characters that all get involved in horrific sci-fi situations in the same facility, or something like that. You see how we can describe the arena that we're in, or the types of stories that will be in that show. even though we can't specifically outline all of them because they're all going to be different, that's how an anthology logline would more kind of work. I would look up loglines for things like Black Mirror, Room 104, and Creepshow, Tales from the Crypt, stuff like that, if that's what you're looking for. Good question, Jay. Thank you for that. So we have about 15 minutes. We have time to do another logline and give more feedback if you guys want. Otherwise, I will open the floor to questions about anything we've talked about, or about the upcoming program, or about Script Camp in general. What would you guys like to ask? And feel free to either raise a hand or use the text chat. We also have the poll back up in the text chat. If you plan to sign up, you can click that number 1 on this list of blue numbers, and you'll get instant access to all of our chat channels. The floor is open for any and all questions. Looks like we have a few people typing, so I'll let you guys finish. Maybe I'll just, as you are finishing those questions, I'll let you know what to do for next week. So, for next week, we want to finalize those series and pilot loglines based, hopefully, on some of the feedback that you've gotten here today. You want to be filling out your sketchbook. Again, there's no real format for this besides those basic questions that we said to answer. So, title, genre, comps, format, and time slot, and pilot and series loglines. Just fill those things out to the best of your ability at the top, and underneath that, you're going to be filling out that document with all kinds of ideas. Ideas for characters, scenes, settings, rules of the world, situations the characters might get in, lines of dialogue. It doesn't have to all fit together at all. You're just throwing as much stuff together as you can to kind of have things to draw from later. So really fill out that sketchbook as much as possible. You can include links to videos or articles or pictures. You can include any kind of media in there, but just keep it all in one document, and you'll be drawing from that. And you can also use that as kind of a workspace to write out early versions of loglines or be working on all throughout class, or to write out early versions of your story beats before you copy and paste them to a new document or things along those lines. So sketchbook, really valuable. We have a question from Jay. Do the loglines reflect the style of show as well? Like, can one episode be absurdist and the other comedic and the next serious in the same anthology revolving around the same concept? It's tricky to pull off, but yes. I mean, your episodes in an anthology can have different tones, but I mean, for the anthologies are really tricky to pitch and just like work to kind of build from the ground up like this. So I would still, in your loglines, try to emphasize whatever it is that links those stories or situations. It shouldn't just be like, well, every week there's some new story. There's got to be something in common. There's got to be some sort of, maybe the genre is similar, even if the tones within that genre are different. Something like Black Mirror has some episodes that are a little bit more comedic or a little bit more absurdist. Some of them are really, really scary. Some of them are a little, more like political thrillers or things like that. But they're all speculative sci-fi that ask big questions about the world and where technology is going and things like that. So try to find whatever it is that links those as you pitch and explain that idea. Riley asks, are all the workshops in this series free or are some paid? This was the free one. All the rest are paid. So you should subscribe if you are intending to continue with the bootcamp program and write this script in 6 weeks. You can go to scriptcamp.net/membership and sign up for your free trial. Right there. Another question from Tamara. Will I show the comps description screen again, please? I'll just link you guys the slides for today's class, and you can review them whenever you want. There you go. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? Or we could do one more logline if somebody has one. And there's all the upcoming free classes in the chat. Thank you, Nacho. So our next free class is going to be Sunday, April 30th, 11 to 1. We're doing an overview of the feature writing course. So how to write a movie in 8 weeks is the name of the course. And in that class, we'll do some similar stuff from today. We'll be doing feedback on those early versions of loglines and taking a look at the broad overview of that feature program. All right, no one has any other questions or log lines? Then we will wrap up for today. Not just asking the chat, does anyone have a revised version based on just the changes perhaps that you made today? I'd be glad to take a look, but this is last call. Cappuccinoco says he has one. Go ahead and share, and I'll be sure to take a look at it right now. All right, series logline. We watch a barely qualified blacksmith rise to become the smith for the royal family. So try not to include the audience in the logline, just keep it in the world of the story. So a barely qualified blacksmith rises through like that. So just change that little bit, and that looks pretty good. Pilot logline. When the royal princess comes to visit the shop to repair her father's crown before dinner, Dale and his cousins manage to ruin the crown and must find a way to make do. Make do meaning, be more specific, they need to find a way to fix it, right? So their actual objective is fix the crown before blank happens. In which case we can probably take out the before dinner part and save that for, or like save the whole before thing to indicate to us what is the actual ticking clock here. We need to now fix it before the king notices, before midnight, before morning, before just be more explicit in what actually they need to do by what time deadline. Nice revisions, though, and good job cutting down on the words. Thank you for that. We are going to wrap up for today. It was great having you guys. Hope you learned a lot and are getting excited to work on your pilot coming up. These next 6 weeks, you're going to write this first draft. It won't be perfect. It'll be kind of a, you're building the train while you're riding the train sort of thing. But finishing that first script and moving on is just such an important part of this. It helps to really build that confidence and to it's like a big mental barrier. Finishing that first script just makes all the other ones much easier afterwards. All right. Thank you guys for coming. We hope to see you back next week with revised loglines and filled out sketchbooks so we can continue all the way through to the end of the class, or of the course. And we hope to see you at your next script camp, class, or event. Have a great rest of your night, folks.